Welcome everyone to another mod spotlight for Hearts of Iron 4, and this time we'll be looking at Expert AI. I was playing this game with Germans, as you can see, just to test out how the AI did against what is, in my opinion, probably the best country in the game used by a player. The AI is on maximum difficulty and it's on veteran, along with the Expert AI mod. However, the Expert AI mod also has its own basically just difficulty modifiers that I didn't use, so you can make the game even more difficult than this. And well, the AI does pretty well. There's a lot of changes that this mod makes that actually make the AI a little bit more competitive with the player. A lot of them do have to do with cheating though, so in case you don't like your AI's cheating in your games, then you should probably not pick up this mod, because there are a lot of cheats that the AI has to employ in order to actually be competitive with the player a little bit. One of them is this one. The easiest one to see is actually the Expert AI modifiers, which reduces the effect of partisans on the AI, because the AI just can't manage resistance that well. It just uses a lot of divisions needlessly for that. So that's one change that kind of improves the fact that the AI actually sends its units to the front. As you can see, the AI manages to form pretty useful fronts against the player. Now, however, it still doesn't take into account terrain quite as much as I would like it to. As you can see, it's sending their medium tanks over to the marshes. But at least in terms of production, it is very, very efficient. Much more so than before. As you can see, the divisions that the Soviets have are basically well balanced. Let's try to see one that's actually alone. Well, it's just switch to the Soviets to see what the AI has done. This is accomplished through the fact that the AI receives templates, basically periodically receives pre-made templates that will be prioritized over the templates that the AI normally makes. These are the ones that the AI normally would make, and as you can see, they're not they're not being used. Instead, the AI is actually using some better ones, like this one, and I believe just, you know, this one has a few divisions as well. This one is actually pretty shit, but, you know, can't make everything right. And in general, the AI manages to actually put up a little bit more of a fight because of it, but also because the priorities for production have been massively reworked. Now, as you can see, the AI is building a lot of artillery and a lot of medium tanks. So the AI does not spam light tanks anymore, which is actually pretty great, and it actually builds things like motorized rocket artillery, builds fighters, and actually prioritizes the right actual amounts of them that they need. So if, for example, we go to the Germans, or not the Germans, that's me, the USA, you can see that the USA actually has built quite a decent industry compared to their normal ones, and has also built naval dockyards. That is because the USA is actually programmed to build dockyards and to build convoys in this one. Unlike the regular game, where the USA kind of neglects the naval part of the game. In general, every AI kind of neglects the naval part of the game in the standard vanilla. Whereas right now, as you can see, the USA is doing much better than it would normally. And it's also got a pretty decent army setup. As you can see, they have a huge amount of forces scattered throughout their lands in a pretty decent combination. They don't just spam one type of unit. Canada also has a lot of units. That's because they don't have to get it for victory, so they don't have the manpower restrictions. Let's go to Japan, and keep in mind this is the end of 1940, so it's not even that late into the game, and the AI already has quite a long list of improvements that it's already kind of shown to use. Japan seems to have a lot of troops, much more than I can actually see, because there's just too many of them. And one thing that I kind of like is that the AI sometimes actually uses anti-tanks in their divisions, so they are going to be much more effective against armor spam than normal. And that's another great change in my opinion. This guy's a new portrait. Interesting. And they also have a slightly better front management, but not that much better, unfortunately. They will still redeploy like crazy. That is, of course, made not as bad by the fact that in general, the units that they are redeploying are better, so even if they are redeploying, they will not be wasted in that regard. And then also the AI keeps more reserves in their actual in their actual logistic pool. Let's just let a day go by so that the thing refreshes. As you can see, the Japanese have 50,000 units of equipment in reserve. So just because they're fighting doesn't mean that they're going to be in any way hindered by just wasting a bunch of troops at the front line and not having anything to reinforce them with. That also gives a lot more difficulty to how you actually play against the AI. Then they build a lot more airplanes, so even with the air forces, you're going to have a hard time actually beating them. Another change that they made is that they kind of railroaded the AI into playing a little bit more historical, which is both a problem and not. I don't like the railroading, but I think it's necessary in this case because with the aim that this mod is going for to make the AI more competitive, it is really necessary that it is railroaded onto a historical path so that it can actually be programmed to do something rather than a more random game that is basically out of control for a modder. Now, obviously, since this is the case, it kind of is railroaded onto certain focuses, so you have to play on historical focuses. Well, you can obviously play on without historical focuses, but it's not going to be as effective as normally. Another thing is the fact that the AI's construction is a little bit more well prioritized. I've already talked about the United States and, as you can see, Japan building a little bit more dockyards, but also in general, the AI prioritizes the military industrial capacity a little bit more than it used to. The AI also receives free variants for vehicles. In fact, if we go to see Japan, I'm not sure if Japan will have any, but yeah, as you can see, that's getting free variants for vehicles, which give it more, essentially, the better ability to actually use this feature that normally the AI would not be able to use because it's just bad, unfortunately. And then the last main change is, in my opinion, the research prioritization. As you can see, the AI actually prioritizes certain types of research a little bit more. Japan does not prioritize tanks, but it prioritizes ships a little bit more. And landing craft. Also a little bit of aircraft. So it doesn't just randomly research things. It also prioritizes things that can be useful to it, such as computing machines, decryption, and the likes. And also industry. Pretty much I believe every major that we go to will have the industry tree up to date at all times. Just kind of making sure that the AI is actually on track with the industry game, with the player, which is, well, obviously in a game that's basically all about industry. Very nice. I always forget the tag for Great Britain. Tag. UKD? No. It's not GBR, it's ENG, right? Let's see. Yeah, as you can see, they're researching 1941 tanks. Very nice. Researching all the artillery for Britain. Infantry equipment is not up to date, unfortunately, for the British, but you can't have everything. The British are actually very low on naval tech, so I guess that did not work quite as intended. And then industry, always up to date. Very nice to see. Let's check out the United States because I didn't see their infantry tab. They're just now getting started, but again, the United States won't get involved in the war for a long time, so that's fine. And then let's check out the Soviet Union just as a last guarantee. As you can see, normally the Soviet AI is very bad at infantry equipment. It just always loses it and goes negative pretty much all the time. But as you can see, it's produced a very impressive array of equipment with which to equip his army, even motorized rocket artillery, which normally the AI never builds. So their divisions are going to be much more effective than your standard AI division. They've even produced a pretty substantial air force, as you can see, and they are not afraid to use it. The AI is definitely more aggressive, let's just say. Definitely more aggressive than in the base game, and they prioritize war economy a lot more and conscription laws a lot more. So you're going to see that the AI basically does what the players always do, which is to get a captain of industry or a armaments organizer. Right now the Soviet Union doesn't have the armaments... What's the name of the guy? War industrialist, sorry. The Soviet Union does not have a war industrialist, unfortunately, but the AI doesn't normally go for any particular one of these in a priority over the others. It just goes for random advisors, which is a problem. And obviously, because of this, it's actually much more formidable in general because it gets the extensive conscription but doesn't too quickly go over to service by requirement, for example, unless it actually needs it. For example, Japan, wow, I'm actually impressed. It did not go to service by requirement, which is really nice. India stayed with volunteer only because they don't need any more. And then the United States probably stayed with limited conscription because they don't need any more. But Canada went with service by requirement because they need more manpower. So as you can see, it's pretty nice and actually almost dynamic. Not quite as dynamic as it's probably possible, but definitely more effective because of it. Speaking of deployment of air forces, that's one area in which I'm not 100% sure the EA gets it. That and the deployment of forces to actually cover coasts. Because as you can see, I've made Operation Sea Lion happen. It was not very hard. The British AI was not covering the coast. That is something that they still need to fix. The AI does have some divisions, but they're just not using them. Partially because they're off fighting in India, partially because they're just bad. They're just bad, they're fighting, or in Africa too. So not really that great on that. And also in terms of Air Force usage, I don't think the AI gets it. Up until about 2 months ago, when the British still controlled the airfields in southern England, they had like 4,000 fighter units basically just hovering in northern France, while I had only 100 fighters covering a huge swarm of naval bombers. As you can see, I've got about 1,500 naval bombers. Some of them are close air supports, just basically plowing English shipping in the English Channel. And that's kind of what allowed me to make the invasion happen. However, the British never redeployed their air force from northern France, despite the fact that there was basically nothing for them to fight in northern France because I had already taken over the place. So, don't really like that. And as you can see, the AI also built forts along the Belgian border. So in a way, that's actually a little bit better than what France did historically. Very smart over there. And then, well, just the Italian AI kind of speaks for itself. It's got 150 divisions and actually do really well in all fronts. For example, in Africa, they're actually pushing up to Egypt. That is partially because there's an option where you can have these overseas territories and colonies released as nations that don't have any faction. They can't join a faction and they don't have any resources, so they can't actually enter the game in any way, in an active way, but they serve to make sure that nobody can actually send troops through this area. A bit like the No Man's Land mod, but it also doesn't make the territory neutral. So you can see that it's still French territory. And, well, yeah. Also, well, I guess a player can declare war on it. But, you know, yeah, just in case they want to clear up the blue over here once they take over the world. And, yeah, that's pretty much it. I believe there is something else I need to talk about, but I forgot. Most likely I did. Yeah, I don't think there is actually anything else. I'm just thinking very hard, but I'm not. I'm just not doing it. Oh, rip. Well, I guess. Oh, right, the Lend-Lease Add-On. There is a sub-mod for it, created by the same people, that essentially makes events that simulate Lend-Lease, but I haven't seen them at work yet, so I can't actually speak on their effectiveness in any way. They're supposed to make sure that the USA sends a lot of Lend-Lease to their allied countries, not through the actual diplomatic option that the AI cannot actually use unless you request Lend-Lease with the DLC, which I don't have. And in that way, essentially, the USA helps out the British and the Soviet Union when they need it. Now, definitely didn't help the British all that much, but who knows? When I play and when I try to take over the Soviet Union, maybe it will actually do it something. But yeah, other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. I hope you will try the mod. As always, I did not make this. The credit goes to the modders, and the links will be in the description for the mod. I definitely recommend that you try it, because it is very, very good. And so, yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you soon, and I hope you enjoyed.